Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are here at the ACIC in Chandler. My name is Diana White. I am the CEO of Chandler Innovations Incubator, and we are going to have a panel discussion today on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to thank Jen. We're doing this event in celebration of Global Entrepreneurship Week, and I am super excited to introduce the panel that is here. We're going to talk about some topical points and answer some questions and share some stories from real leaders in the community. And so I'll start with Lauren. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Lauren Pond. I'm the owner of Chandler Tactical Firearms in Chandler, Arizona. I'm a disabled, Army vet, served 10 years active duty, been around the world, seen everything, multiple duty stations. One of the main things that, was instilled with me, I'm a third generation small business owner from Chandler, was to, be part of the community. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you for coming. Crystal? Hello. My name is Crystal Blackwell, the owner of Crystal Clear Results. I do consulting, I do training, I do coaching. I'm an enthusiast about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I go into workplaces. I help them assess their DE&I strategy and provide coaching and training. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. Those are the two things I really love and enjoy. I believe that if a business, large, small, government, doesn't have a DE&I strategy in the 21st century, then they're missing the mark completely. So, I love sharing tools and tricks around that space. Excellent. Excellent. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, okay. Number one, I'm super excited to be right next to it. With the team that's here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm Ty James Largo, CEO and creative director of Awe Collective, and we are a marketing, public relations, and branding firm based here in the Valley. Clients include everything from a wide span of like the California Democratic Party to Sky Harbor Airport to the city of Flagstaff. Kind of a wide mix. So we represent a lot of folks, and proud to say that we're also too, which I'll share a little bit more later, is that we're named the #1 best place to work in all of Arizona by the Phoenix Business Journal, because I do obsess about company culture, and a lot of that has to do with what we're talking about today. So that's what I'll bring to the table to sort of share how we create and make a plan for actual, just real cultural development within an organization.
I love it. And you hit it. It comes from the top down. So I love that. All right. We're going to probably go right into the questions. So I have some questions here that I thought would be good icebreakers to talk about stories, real stories from real leaders, right? Let's start with the first one, and we'll start with Lauren and then work our way down with this first question. So what was your first encounter within the workplace that made you feel different or marginalized?
Well, one of the main things was, coming out of the military, spending a decade in the military, wearing the same clothes every day, knowing exactly where you need to be. And just one day you're at a different world, and coming into that world, I ended up going in automotive sales. So I was an e-commerce sales manager, for a Chevy dealership, next to the base I was at. And coming into that, after being medically retired from the military, the hiring process alone was a very difficult thing coming out of the military, because right out of high school, join the military, and the only thing you have on your resume is maybe some small jobs in and out burger, some small stuff before the military. And then you have all your military's, accolades, right? Which absolutely does not transition over into the civilian world at all. I was an infantryman, so I was on the ground, no real experience besides leadership and how to clean guns, you know, the normal stuff that the military does for the infantry. So coming over into the civilian market was a journey because you don't have the education, but you have the leadership. But the two things don't correlate, you know. So, you know, going into my first job, you know, showing up with my resume and no sales experience, no experience outside of the military, and sitting down with somebody like the GM to get hired, and you know, they're like, "Oh, you're in the military. Okay, what else you do?" You know, and then you come out of the military with such pride. You know, I have the pride of, you know, I went and did these things, traveled the world, deployed, and nothing to show for it to the civilian market. And so, you know, one of the things was, you know, we had sales draw, right? So as you're learning, because it's all commission based, they give you a little stipend every month, you know, just to kind of keep you on your toes if sales aren't going too well. And he said, well, military doesn't get that. And it was an interesting thing, you know, being thrown into the market and just being like, why don't I get this? You know, and, you know, he later told me, would say, oh, because you said that you were retired. So you're already getting money from the government. And it was one of those things that kind of just like turned a light bulb on for me. Okay. I need to show up. I need to do my work, and, you know, I'll work there, you know, and I don't know if that was something that he was trying to look for or what, but it was really one of those things. It was like, all right, you know, this is kind of what it is. And I worked with, you know, multiple managers, stuff like that, always gravitating towards the military manager, you know, because there's always at least one military person, you know, and you gravitate towards them, you know, and then other people don't want to work with you because you were in the military. You know, you get a lot of the, I guess you'd say, you know, I'm going to talk to you for 90 days because you'll probably end up being a cop anyways. You know, and stuff like that, that was my first encounter in the workplace. Besides, you know, from the management point, besides the normal people that you could work with, you know, oh, you're in the military, but you did some cool stuff, you know, and it's okay, I know what questions coming next, you know, and you get a lot of that. And so that was kind of my first encounter, you know, coming back into the workplace.
So you were treated differently because they felt that you had a cushion, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got this money coming in, so we don't need to give you this money. Two, they kind of, that standoffish kind of ostracizing you to figure out, if you're going to stay or if you're going to go be a police officer. And that boggles my mind as well to say, okay, you went into the military. Now we're going to pigeonhole you into one of two categories of service, of work. If you went into the military, you're going to be a cop. That's what that is, right? You can't,
Or security guard, you know.
or security guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful to know that we're still doing that in this day and age. And, you know, the funny thing is, I teach our founders at Channel Innovations, you know, really, there are some skill sets that can be taught. Soft skills, leadership, those types of things. It takes a long time to learn, but if it's inherent, you got a good deal going on. And we know our military. We know a lot of our military personnel come out with extraordinary leadership skills, extraordinary skills to be able to ascertain what to do under pressure. I feel like that those are the two, if not the top two, in the top 5 of the things that you need to be a good employee, good worker, good leader.
And I don't even work under pressure.
Yeah.
When there's no pressure, I don't know what I'm doing.
So
Coffee.
It amazes me that those skills that you come out with after serving our country, that they're not taken into account. So, okay. Thank you for sharing that. Crystal. Yes, I am. My first experience, feeling marginalized. I think that's a good question. I remember this like yesterday because it really did impact my view in the workplace. So I was my first job, my first adulting big girl job, and I say that because I had the 401k and I had my insurance. So I was very young. I was very high spirit. I was always a very good worker. People got along with me. I was likable. I enjoyed working. And I worked at a bank and I was a bank teller in a very affluent branch with high depositors. I mean, it was nothing to see in a deposit $10-15 million. That was the base of that branch. And the depositors loved me. I was likable. I was cheerful. I was a good worker. I gave great service. I was good at my job. But the manager did not. And I didn't really recognize the behaviors. I think that happens a lot when you're not used to something. And it started to show up gently. So it wasn't like in my face, which I think sometimes can be deceiving when you're in that space, when you're being treated differently. And so an example of what she would do was she would have a meeting and invite everyone but not me. So how do I find out about policy change? How do I find out about different things going on in the branch? She would have events at her home and invite everyone except me. When depositors would come in, they would bring me gifts. I mean, they really liked me. And she would say that I couldn't accept them, but she would accept gifts around holidays from depositors. And the staff sort of pick up on it. I was I was like 19. So the people who were there who were older sort of picking up on it, and they would come to me and apologize for her behavior. So this is where, here I was, a really good worker, got great feedback from everyone, but I wasn't included. I didn't feel bad. I felt more bad for her, but I knew what she was trying to do. So this is what happens when you do that in a workplace. So instead of me staying there, what did I do? I ended up leaving, because that's what happens when you're in a workplace. You're not treated fairly and you're not treated, equally. There's no inclusion, part of it. Then people leave. So they left a good employee, and I went to another branch, and did really well. So I remember that just really poking out in my memory as a learn for me of what not to do when I got into leadership. I spent 20 years in leadership, and that stuck with me of not making people feel excluded and what it feels like. So that's my example that I carried and shared for years.
Yeah. And that, what, it's unfortunate, but I think a little fortunate that you learned that at such an early age. Like the 19-year-old, I feel so badly for that young woman, but Crystal had to go through that to be the Crystal she is. So it's kind of a catch-22, right? Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Ty.
Well, you stole my thunder. It's similar story though. Definitely not the first time I had an encounter with and are feeling marginalized, but the most important one was the last time I ever had a job, which was 14 years ago. And same thing, I left a job that was not serving me well and was not treating me equitably. Everything from very strong tinges of homophobia, ageism was a big one for this group, nepotism, racism. So I was working for a software firm, and it was owned by a family company. And no matter how many millions of dollars that I was actually building to create great products and for them, there was always that sort of like lunch table side conversation, like, oh yeah, like when something comes up about, it was like something about Adam Lambert or something, I don't remember. And like the father of the organization said something like, well, back where I'm from, like we don't have to solve that problem. Like stuff like that. That just was casual side conversations that were just like, whoa. And also ageism too. I think that's a big thing when we talk about inclusion and equity. It's I at that time I probably did look like a little kid. I was 26, I think, but I was 19. But yeah, so it was tough to like prove that I've got something to bring to the table, and like even after like the evidence that I was like creating these products and like making this in this business and building it, still never good enough. Wasn't part of the failing. Wasn't white enough. Wasn't straight enough. Wasn't old enough. All that stuff. And to your point, it's my friend, yeah, even like credentials too. People just like they want to look at your resume. Well, I did go to school for 5 years in college, but I never got a degree. So like the paper, really limits you to like what your opportunities are too. So even that as well too, like your access to education or even just your ability to complete education. In my case, like I'm pretty smart guy, but the traditional school system wasn't for me. It didn't work for me, and I made my own path and stuff. But if you look on paper of what I do, and like what I'm qualified to do, like what certifications, degrees, whatever, it's like I don't have any of those, but I do what I do. So yeah, that experience with that software firm was it was life changing. I left 14 years ago. Never looked back. Opened my own agency. And it was a very divisive point for me to just like depart and go. And like, it's made me better too. It's like it's one of those things where it's like, I'm never going to do these things. Right. You just make a checklist of like, oh, I'll never do this. I'll never do this. I'll never do this. Cause it was things that were done to me. And you learn from it. I mean, and hopefully others don't have to go through that process too, but like, I am in a weird way grateful for that experience because I carry that on forward. I hope I do. I do my best to do that. So yeah.
And I love the fact that you said that lesson. I left, but that lesson, that full circle. Now you have your own company and all of that stuff. It's like not in my house.
Yeah.
Make sure this doesn't happen. And that's powerful. And that's what we say, starting from the top down. Because, so many people don't realize that, your company will create a culture, whether you influence it or not, it's going to create a culture. And if you don't take the lead and do the right thing, sometimes that culture can get away from. Absolutely. And so that is powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to go into the next question now. But before we do go into this question, a lot of people that I've spoken to, so I'm assuming there may be some watching us today, that they don't understand what the term microaggression means. And we talk about it a lot now, and I'm glad that it's more in the forefront because we didn't talk about it before. We talked about the outward racism, right? We didn't talk about the microaggressions that some people suffer every day. And so I hate to put you on the spot, Crystal, but I know you would probably do a better job of explaining what a microaggression is than I would. So I'm going to give you the mic, if you will, for a moment to just explain it, and then we'll go into it.
Okay, thank you. I keep it simple. A microaggression is a verbal, nonverbal, environmental sort of a dig that a person will take on you. It could be your race, it could be how you show up, it could be the way you talk, it could be stereotypes that is labeled on your race or your gender or your sexual orientation. Sometimes they're not intentional. Most of the times they are. And they're the ones that you can easily sweep under the carpet because they're not bold in your face, but they hurt. And that quote that your words, your words are, the words mean something, but you're really left with how you feel. Mm-hmm. A microaggression, you feel that instantly. It is like a dig. And they're all over, everywhere, every day. Maybe every day they're going on.
Yeah, it is. We've talked about this as African Americans. I sometimes I feel like not just every day, almost by the hour, I'm getting a microaggression in some way, shape, or form. But I want to ask you guys, give us, if you have them, a couple of examples of microaggressions that you wish people were more cognizant that it's harmful, that it does harm, right? It's not just words, right? You take that away. Let's go ahead. I'm going to switch it around. Start with Todd. Do you have examples?
Yeah. It's little things where like, and that's microaggressions, the little things that you just do, almost unconsciously, at some point, it becomes a thing. So like, or like within like, I'll speak for my own self, like in like a culture, people saying like, "Hey girl," stuff like that. It's just like, it feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. And it might be like out of like, I'm just being a nice person and thinking like we're trying to talk the same language, whatever. But it's like you don't understand that language. Like it's just very weird to say that. Yeah, like or like, hey sister, like it's like
Yeah.
weird, very weird. I think two big ones for me. Outside of like race and sexuality, that don't get exported up. And oh my gosh, you'd be like way more qualified to talk about this than I would. Just with their expertise. But for me, just from like when I deal with these issues, two things for me would be like classism and ageism. Not really understanding like where people are coming from and like what their journey has been, and not taking the time to like learn that and stuff. And so you might make just very flippant comments about that could be related to classism without even knowing about it, not knowing that like, yeah, you might think like, oh, he's like a, big CEO of a marketing company, but like, you don't know that like also I grew up like in a poverty stricken reservation, like, and like that journey is very different. So when we talk about like things about welfare and things like that I grew up on, like, and you say it in such a, just a real flippant way, and like social public programs, things like that. It's like that. To me, those are like microaggressions. And also like ageism is a big one for me, and it goes both ways. For sure, it's a spectrum. Yeah. I mean, I can't speak obviously to the older age folks, but like, but I see I've felt those effects so much. I've been denied so many opportunities because I'm just too young looking, and then I talk to my colleagues and my friends who are on the opposite side of the spectrum of age, and say things like, "You're too old." It's just like, what? Like, what are you talking about? So when I develop my internship programs, and I have one of my star kids actually right here behind the camera, he's 23 and he's brilliant, and like, the age doesn't matter, like talent is talent, and if you see that, you see it, and you see that opportunity, like you have to look past that. I think that's part of like this whole discussion too, is like inclusion, like the diversity is great. I don't want to look at a number. I want to just like look at the person and like what their abilities are and what they can bring to the table for us and learn from it. So
I agree. I started out in retail in leadership very young, managing people twice my age. And it was daunting.
Yeah.
It was daunting for me because I didn't have the confidence, and I was afraid that they would just pat me on the head and say, "Go away, little girl."
Yeah.
And I had to have a talk with myself. And I remember the turning point was I had one gentleman, and this was years ago when I worked in Manhattan. And I asked him, there was a job that needed to be done, a task that needed to be done, and it wasn't anyone's favorite task. And I was just like, "Hey, can you do this?" And he's like, no other words, but basically it was, "Who are you to tell me what to do? You're too young," And I remember looking at him and saying, don't look at me telling you this and saying I'm too young, it's my age. Look at me telling you this because this is what the company wants us to do. I'm the voice of the company right now.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with me, my race, my age, my gender. This needs to be done. And so are you going to do what the company needs us to do? Or are you going to find another place to work because you don't want to be a deep player in the company?
Yeah.
And when I said that, in my mind, I'm saying, I can't believe you just said that.
I love that framing.
You know,
So good.
but he fell in line.
Yeah.
And we became really good friends afterwards. And it just took me saying, hey, stop making this personal.
Yeah.
This is not personal. This is what we need to do. And so I resonate with that very much. Crystal.
I just want to comment before I do on the age piece. That is, I'm actually just like, I think early last week, I did a workshop in the organization about the 5 generations that are in the workplace. Some industries are 3, that's the average, but there's 5. And ageism is a fast growing ism of all the isms right now because of that. So you're so spot on with that, where we have really super sharp young professionals not being given opportunities because of age, or people who are older that have all this experience and knowledge to pour down, so it's for you to say that, that's one that's kind of near and dear, and it's one of the fastest growing isms that workplace experience, which is pretty interesting when you think about all of them that are out there.
Yeah.
For me to answer your question, I think it's the couple that always pop out. There's one that's just like, ooh, when I hear it, I just cringe. And that's when someone says, I don't see color. And it's like, well, I want this, you got to miss all this, but I want you to see the variations of, look at this. This is beautiful, right? So when you say you don't see color, I hear you don't see me. And I want you to see. Because this is a lot of work to get here, and I have the gifts and skills and talents to bring to the table like everyone else. So when people say that, I gently correct and explain that. And then a lot of times I'm conscious and they just kind of go, wow, I didn't think that. So to say that doesn't mean, I have Black friends, I'm good. It means you don't really see Crystal as an individual and what she can bring to the table beyond what she looks like. So I don't really like that one. Another one is assigning labels to people of different races, assigning intelligence, they call it. But for instance, happens and still happens where people would say, if you're Asian, you're good at math. Well, I know Asians who are like, listen, I'm not good at math, or I am not proud of it. But why do we assign that to different races just because? So I think, those are the 2 ones that pop out that are still, we've all either heard that or been part of that. They're very still strong and going.
Totally. Like that reminds me of a situation. You mentioned like Asians are good at math, but I was with a group of friends and someone passed the bill to a friend of mine who's Asian and was like, hey, you do this. Like you figure out it's it. Like little microaggressions like that are just like, it's like a little dig.
I know.
But it's like in jest, but it's also like absolutely inappropriate.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
check yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so
I think some of mine's, a big one for me is you're so well spoken. That drives me nuts. That drives me nuts.
Right.
I don't know how else I'm supposed to speak.
Right.
Another one, because my name is so generic, Diana White. I cannot. If I had a penny for every time this happened, I'd be a billion. You weren't what I was expecting.
Oh God. Yeah.
It just. You'd be surprised how these things, and there are cultural things too as well, that you might not even know that that's a trigger because you're not a part of that culture.
Right.
For African American women, our hair is a big deal. It's been a big deal for a very long time. How we treat it, how we wear it, how we're accepted in the workplace because of it. Don't touch it. And so when I decided to wear my natural hair in its natural state, and I'll flip back and forth and wear it however I want because God gave it to me to wear however I want. But when I wear it naturally and someone says, oh, that's interesting. Or I remember this was years ago. I was in a meeting and I was the only person of color there. and a gentleman came in, and I had my hair was longer, and it was probably Shaka Khan-ish. And he didn't even say hello to anyone in the room. The first thing he did was he walked up to me and he said, "I just want to ruffle your hair." He didn't touch me, but just that action, I was taken aback. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And to him, he didn't mean any harm. He was celebrating. He was like, "This is new. This is interesting." To me, it's you. Don't single me out. Don't put the spotlight on me. This is not about me. Boundaries, exactly. There are so many more I could think of, but I'm not going to take up all the time.
All right. I mean, I completely get the name thing, having the name Lauren.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I get it all the time, you know. Oh, it's the business owner, and you're talking to Lauren? And it's like, yeah. Oh, I thought it was Luminon. No. That's why the little Roman numeral at the end, I make sure I bold it, you know, just so they automatically know when they're reading it. And it's the mail, if they still
It's amazing that the microaggressions, they go down to the name, you know, down to, I had a boss, his name was Kim, Kim. And every time we would go to a conference, he would always have to go to the reservation desk because he knew that they paired him with another woman in a room. And he would have to say, "I'm a male, please put me with another male." Every single time. That is absolutely fun.
got the best one yet. I was in Iraq, and there's this program called the Gold Star Mothers that send care packages. Well, everyone got care packages. I get my care package. I open it up. Online. Women accoutrements and stuff like that. And I'm like, so I gave them to one of my soldiers. They had fun with it all.
Like that.
I'm walking around leggings and all that. So at least we found fun out of it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It's one of those things with names. You know, microaggressions, you know, towards, I guess you'd say, kind of, you know, my community, you know, in a disabled veteran, just being a better, you know, in whole, you know, you get it a lot. Thank you for your service. We're kind of talking about this a little bit before, you know. Oh, you know, I'm a lover, not a fighter. That's probably my favorite one, you know, when it comes to microaggressions, because it really hurts. Because I know what they're saying,
Yeah.
you know, but they're not coming out and saying exactly that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, or, you know, or the other one, oh, did you deploy? You know, and then you're like, I know exactly what questions come. You know, the most inappropriate thing you could ever ask a soldier.
Absolutely.
You know, and it happens. I can't tell you how many times, you know, somebody's asked that question, you know, and it's like, first off, I'm not going to tell you. Second off, go away. Like,
Yeah. That is a certain kind of voyeurism that
Yeah.
I think social media has exacerbated. We feel so emboldened to ask questions that really it's none of our business, and we don't know how that question will affect or trigger the other person, but we feel so free to ask because social media has made everything so public. Yeah, and you know what? It's so funny. Again, we all live in our own prisons, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm learning, you know, Crystal and I, obviously we go through many of the same microaggressions. I'm learning about what you go through. I'm learning about what you go through. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, okay. And the only reason why I know that it is not necessarily the most appropriate thing for every soldier is because I know a lot of people that have served. But anyone else would say, well, that's innocuous. Thank you for your service. But is it? Is it really? It depends on where you're coming from when you say it, you know?
And it depends on what person too.
Yeah.
Context, totally.
Context.
I've had people that it's like, you know, they hear thank you for their service and they're just like, whatever, like you completely, you know, just ignore that it was ever said. And some, oh yeah. Thank me.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's one of those weird things when it comes to that. It's like, it depends on who the person is, what their experience was in the military, you know, because some people, you know, they're cooks, you know, and they're very proud of what they did and how they did it. And that thank you for the service hits a lot different than the guy that was sleeping in ditches, that the guy that was patch up his buddy, So it kind of, is it a Band-Aid or is it a gold star he stuck on?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
So what's
Country.
interesting here is that, in my business, when I talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, diversity, oftentimes people will check themselves out and they think it's a black, white bucket, or they think it's gender or sexual orientation. But diversity is everything we're talking about. There is not a person on this planet that doesn't have a lane in the diversity line. And, and there's people that still think that it's race and it's not. So I get to organizations and they go, well, I want you to do all this training for my people. And these are C-suite folks. Well, I need to spend time with them for a minute so they can understand that you're part of diversity too. A lot of white males will say, it's not me. Then I'll pause and say, well, you're going to be a senior citizen one day if you're blessed. And they go, yes. I go, then you're a part of a diversity.
It's like a kaleidoscope.
Absolutely.
Yep.
If you have a pre-existing condition, then you have this diversity, everything. So I love how we're all sharing that and we're showing that so people can really broaden their definition of diversity and get away from it just being a black or white thing. It's a human race conversation.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to have this panel format and chose the representation that I did, because I've been watching a lot of diversity and inclusion trainings and talks, and I'm seeing a lot of the same groups represented, and I'm seeing some groups still in the shadows, not being able to tell their story.
Right.
And so this was important for me to do this today. So thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you.
So I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like my partner this morning. As he was leaving the house, he was like, "Oh, are you excited for your panel thing?" And I was like, "I'm mostly excited. Just like listen and learn." That's what it's really about. Like, and like I've already learned so much just sitting here, and like that's part of like this discussion is to be facilitated and encouraged, and everyone can be a little vulnerable, everyone can share a little bit, everyone can be proud,
Absolutely.
yeah, and everyone needs to learn. So there's so much stuff I don't know.
I'm still learning.
Yeah, yep. You're always going to be learning, and like the diversity is going to just get even more diverse. So it's like there's not like an end point. It's not a period at the end of the sentence. It's like an ellipses, like boop boop boop, to be continued. I think we talked about sort of let's say like trans rights like 10 years ago. People wouldn't. That wasn't a discussion. It was very much like a very shunned, sort of like weird, marginalized group, but now it's a very open discussion. Who knows what's going to be next? Like, who knows what that next moment's going to be? Like, everyone's going to have some level of PTSD after the past 24 months of being in a pandemic, and so we have to like be ready. What's that going to result in from the long term gain? Like, how do we have compassion and understanding and education about that? Because it wasn't planned at all. I mean, it's like you got to learn with like how things evolve and change. So again, it's like a ... moment. It's not a period.
So true. All right. So a heavy hitter coming up. Have you ever felt that your race, religion, identity, etc., has held you back from a promotion or a successful partnership or venture?
Look at it.
No, I know that's a heavy one.
Yeah.
It's
a tough one. Yeah. And actually just did a chat on National Indigenous Peoples Day, which happened to be also coming out day 2 weeks ago, that touched right on that, where like I every day, like I think people think like coming out is like a one and done thing. Right. I did it. Yeah. Knocked it out. I am 40 years old, and every single day I have to come to the decision of like, if I reveal some part of my identity, will that cost me this contract? Every day. So I have to decide like how much can I be myself every single day, every day. Whether I'm sitting at like, just my like, neighborhood bar, I'm sitting next to just somebody like how much can I be myself? Like, fix the hot dog jacket, gives it away.
I love the jacket.
But no, you're constantly, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. I have like mouths to feed. I have families to support, like in my business, and like as much as I want to be as loud and just all that stuff. People say like you just out in pride and all those things. Well, no, there's consequences. Like there are people that
Yes.
that will actually act to harm my business and my kids, like all my kids, my work family. So yeah, I think every day I have to like make that tough decision of like, when do I actually reveal my full self? Like when can I, or do I ever?
Right.
So it's tough. Yeah. So I have absolutely lost contracts. Definitely felt the temperature in the room, people coming into my boardroom and potential clients, and like you can just smell it in the air. They're just like, oh no, 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 no. And my workplace is pretty diverse too. Like my number one, Cheyenne, she's super rad. And she's very much herself. She's got crazy colored hair and like hats all over. And she's like your first impression when you come into the agency. And even that too, like we talk about like, and it's sad, but sometimes she has to have a cardigan, just to slip on when she needs to and stuff. And like we have to have that. And I've had that real conversation with her. And typically those are not clients that are a good fit for us anyways.
Mm-hmm.
We're big about culture. So if you don't fit our vibe, we don't fit your vibe. Well, yeah, here's a list of other agencies that you can go be boring with. But yeah, so yeah, we've definitely lost, gosh, it would like blow my brain to think about like how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe in the millions of contracts that we just get because not wide enough, not straight enough, not old enough, not more what you would expect to look more traditional as an advertising executive.
Even though advertising itself has evolved and it is no longer a traditional thing.
It's the creative.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It's crazy, especially now too. Like the face of advertising is like more in the hands of the consumer. Like like TikTok influencers, things like that. Like you would expect more acceptance for diversity, and it's just it's it's evolving. I'll say that for sure. It is not de-evolving. It is evolving. But man, it's like a snail's pace. Oh my gosh. It's like I thought in my generation, in my lifetime, I'd be able to see that like leapfrog into the future. But it's sort of just like a slow.
That's okay. Did you know what? In my lifetime, we're able to have this pen. And so it may feel like it's slow,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
But I would be crying.
Crystal, tell us.
I'm sure I have in my business. If I pause and really think about specific things, nothing has really bubbled up since I've been an owner of my own business, my CEO of what I do. Because I create that space, so which I love that. But I do recall a time when I was in leadership, major Fortune 100 insurance company. If I said her name, everyone in this room would get it. And I was doing interim role for a manager. And at the time I was pregnant, and because they had the manager at the time somehow displaced or something. So I volunteered for the experience, in that space, and I did really well. I had like 6 supervisors underneath me, and then a whole maybe 80 folks underneath them, and we were really able to hit targets. And I was always knew how to get my ROI. I always knew how to dig in. They invested in me. They would send me on to different types of conferences, and they paid me well. So I got all of the tangible stuff to say you're doing a good job. But when I had my son and came back and they actually posted the job, they gave it to a guy who was a supervisor, 2 years experience. And they could never, and I, of course, want to have a conversation about it. Because I took notes. I knew strategically what I wanted to do to get this promotion. And they, were able to dance around it. But again, that was another example of what I would say I would not do, or I would not coach a person to do differently, maybe. But that was very clear to me, and it hurt. It hurt because it was like, wow, look what this is like in my face. And others saw it. People would come up and other peers would, and so that was a stage for me, but it was a good one because I had to learn that. I had to see that at that leadership level, it comes down to equity. Because here I could have been able to make more money for myself and my family. I was completely qualified and was doing the job well because they told me, I had it documented. So there is an opportunity I could not, I could move up. So there's equity. Of course, I didn't feel valued. So what do you think I did?
You left.
Absolutely.
And this goes back to, what Lauren was talking about, which is, they see you were in the military and they automatically equate it to a work gap. And that's what happens to so many women that go on maternity leave and then come back. It's, you've been gone. Sometimes it's 5-6 weeks. 5 or 6 weeks is nothing.
It's nothing.
But to them, okay, we've evolved 1,000 times and you're not ready,
Right.
which makes no sense at all. But we are discarded because, we left for a little bit to bring in the next generation of human beings. Wow.
Yeah. It was a tough learn, that one I shared with my husband, we learned that together, and it gave me some insight about me. It gave me some insight about that structure. And it really, at first I would share stories, but this one I experienced it. And then it was interesting how they try to, sometimes guilt will make you do things and create a role for me that didn't line up to my skill set. And I didn't feel valued for that. You can't purchase it. You can't purchase, inclusion. You can't make a person feel better about when you do something that's just not right.
I call it workplace cop.
Yeah, right.
You're
upset.
I gotta do something.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is it never hardened me. Like I'm not hardened from it. I don't like growl when I think about it. I don't, I don't have, it didn't harden me. It gave me a shell. For me, it was more like I look back on those business cases. But I was just the person. And I was tough enough and I was nimble and I was always able to be resilient. But I was always able to look at the situation, look back and really see what happened and learn that lesson to pay it forward. So I talk to executives about my stuff and get in front of them so they don't repeat it with other top talent. Because there's competition out there.
Yeah.
And good people, like I was good. What did I do? What did you do? We'd leave because we're marketable. We know we can.
And it costs companies money.
And it costs them money.
And it's like we're in the middle of the Great Resignation right now.
Oh, yeah.
And so much of that is due to these issues.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm fine on my own. Like,
That's right.
he's out. Like, I'm out. Like, yeah, it's way to value me as a human.
Business.
Like,
Because people say, I don't want to work for you. I'm going to build my own.
yeah, it's the culture. Like, you can have your own culture on your own, and then make your own thing. So it's like people are surprised that this has happening right now. It's like, oh, it's just been like brewing.
Oh,
This the dawn of time.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I got some just real quick. I was actually talking with my significant other this morning about it, about promotions and stuff like that. And she was telling, she's like, yeah, I've never gotten promoted. I've been in the same position for 5 years. Why do you think that is? And she goes, oh, I'm a top performer. I'm a top performer. Why would they get rid of their racehorse? And I started thinking about the same thing. I'm like, and I'm sure both of you guys were exactly the same way. It's, the person I am going to do 110% because I just always feel like I have target on that.
Right.
So it causes me to produce to a point
Mhm.
where it doesn't make business sense to move. Why do I want to promote this person when they're superseding everybody else that holds the same job title? It was like when I was doing the automotive sales, my numbers were so high that if they were to lose me, right, there goes like a third of the company's sales, and I ran into that, and it's only because I've been fueling the fire because of what and how they treat,
Right.
So, I mean, do you feel like any of that may have been like, a reason that you've hit a position that you've hit it?
No, I don't, because really strategically top performers should be groomed to keep them. You want to promote them.
Correct.
Unless they make a choice to say, hey, I love my job. I love what I do. Back off. I'm going to be the star performer. You get people that say that. I know people who do really well and they've been in the same job for 20 years and they excel. But most organizations try to build in where they're developing you and they're actually want to, improve you. They want to invest in you, give you skills that you can look at other opportunities. And usually the employee, hopefully the employer, the manager having these conversations where, like just to get to others, obviously stuff like they love their job and they love what they're doing. But it comes a time when they're like, okay, I want to try something new. Is that gate going to open up for them or is it going to stay closed because of, selfish leadership?
Mm-hmm. That's always, it's a leadership thing, I guess, when it comes into that.
You just say top down. You've said that several times.
Yep.
That's very important.
So we actually have about maybe 5 minutes left. We don't have any questions in the queue, which I'm assuming that means that a lot of people are getting some good information. Before we wrap this up, I want to give each of you just a few seconds opportunity to give some parting advice to anybody that's viewing this that might be facing some of the same challenges. And I would say especially youth, because I feel like even though they are louder than we've ever heard them before, I feel like they still feel they might not have a voice and they don't see themselves reflected. So I'll start with you, Lauren. What advice would you give anyone facing the same challenges?
Know who you are. Nobody, one of the hardest things I had to come to terms with was at the end of the day, nobody cares. And it's the truth. Nobody cares.
It's true.
Your feelings and your emotions are only going to affect the way you are. It's on those people to change how they are. You're never going to change them. It's on them to figure it out. So just don't beat yourself up over it. It's like he was saying, the world's changing. It's going to change. Acceptance is going to change. Everything's going to change, but don't let that affect where you want to get in life. There's going to be some struggles and whatnot, but, I guess that's the biggest thing I can say, towards somebody dealing with the issues.
Perfect. Crystal, know your words, know who you are, know your values, be very clear about what's important to you. When I was going through my struggles, even at 18 and 19, when I was at the bank, I knew my values. I knew that, treat people right, they'll treat you right. If they don't, then you have to make a choice if you want to stay in that situation, which can be abusive for some, bad treatment, then you have the choice to leave. So I always understood by knowing your values, kindness, we can still navigate this world and all of this, being kind and respectful, and not holding on to things. Everything's a lesson. Learn the lesson, be honest about it, because sometimes it's you, and then move on and pay it forward, give of knowledge, give of self. And then lastly, toughen up, have that courageous conversation. don't be afraid to pull someone aside and say, hey, you know what, that really bothered me when you said that. And I really want to talk about it. You know, it's the approach. But what I will say for the younger, 40 and below, I can say that because I'm over that, obviously. But they really aren't armed with courageous conversations. I find young professionals are able to talk to people about different things. So we are getting better. You know, we are moving in the right direction. But yeah, be okay with it. And don't be a bystander of just, you know, meanness. Don't just be a bystander. You know, either if you can't say something, do something, get someone that can. But we're all part of this. You can't solo this world without understanding that diversity and equitable, and that means getting your value, and inclusion, making people feel needed, wanted, included. We all are trying to stay in the game.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Ty.
I have to follow that.
I mean, yes.
I'll take the baton and talk about, it's a conversation. I think and the conversation is equal parts listening, equal parts talking. And so being able to know going into this whole venture, I think when people talk about EDI, it's about like shaming or like any of that stuff, like where it's just like, oh, like you're the finger pointing, like you're doing this to me, whatever. But that conversation creates context, which is like so important. And that's where you start to learn. And like the learning part is the big part of it. It's like there's so much even here in this conversation that I have so I'm just shutting up and like listening. Great. So I think it's equal parts listening and talking. My approach always has been to be like equal parts self-deprecating and also proud at the same time too, creating sort of spectrum. So I might say something like I wish I knew what it was like to grow up in like a major city and not having grown up in poverty, like on a reservation. But I'm super proud of like where I've gotten to because now I'm the CEO of my own company and I lead a lot of brands, major brands across the nation, and that's my story. You know, like I don't know, creating a little context I think for everybody. That spectrum I think is important because you just don't ever know like where someone's coming from. You never know. You might assume like, oh, just a military person. Like you have like one box to check of like what you think about that, but you don't know the context of it. Really don't, and I don't. And like that was great for me to hear today too, to learn more about how deep that is, and I still have more learning to do on that stuff. So it's a conversation. It's equal parts like listening and talking.
Well, I have to say,
We have a question.
we have a question.
We do.
Okay.
Todd King wants to know, what do you believe is the most important thing we can do as individuals to help DE&I initiatives succeed?
Wow. Well, we don't have a lot of time, so I think I'm going to defer to the expert in the middle. Crystal, go ahead and answer that question.
Thank you for asking because that tells me you care. And I think that's huge. So thank you. That's courageous that you care about the space. Educate yourself. You know, a lot of it is about self-education. And to me, that's the first part. Educate yourself for one. Don't be hard on yourself because you gotta say, oh boy, I do this. You know, I do it. I check myself like, oh boy, there's a microaggression. So it is so deep in our culture that we're trying to unlearn a lot. So don't be hard on yourself as you begin to learn. And also, you know, at the end of the day, it is about kindness and compassion and conversations and get out of your circle, meet different people, different ages, different backgrounds, different races, different sexual orientation. This world is abundant of so many wonderful, different people. So get out of your lane and just, you know, maybe introduce yourself to someone different, take them out for coffee, hear their words, understand their experience.
Excellent. Any more questions? I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank my guests, Lauren, Crystal, Ty. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you to the City of Chandler and the Chandler Economic Development Department for being sponsors and just amazing supporters of the Chandler Innovations Incubator. And we will see you at our next event. Thank you so much.